Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ashely Aireonna, joined by my wonderful friend, Tom Jensen. How you doing, Tom?
Doing well, Ashley. How are you?
I'm doing really great. Last time I talked to you, it was like 95 degrees in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Now it's like 75 or 80, which is my ideal temperature
Yeah,
for the
that's
world.
perfect.
Yeah, a little bit of a breeze coming off the bay, but in the sun, it's just absolutely beautiful. So I'm
Nice.
enjoying
Well,
myself.
East Bay, when it's that kind of weather, is beautiful.
It's so nice, and yeah, so I'm having a really good day. At the little gym I go to, there's like a transformation challenge thing that they were having people do, and I didn't want to lose weight or gain weight or add muscle. Like I'm not interested in that stuff, but I used it to make sure, like, because you get little checks if you do stuff every day. So my little checks were if I took my iron every day. So I've taken my iron every day for 8 weeks now, and I do think it's made a
Good.
difference. I feel like I can run faster. We did like a VO2 max test at the beginning and the end
Oh, wow.
of it, which is like a 12-minute run for distance. And I was able
Hmm.
to run significantly faster. And it even felt like I beat my PR and it felt easier than last time I did it, even though I beat it. So I felt
That's
like,
usually the way it works when you run, is that when you run fast, you don't feel like you're going fast, but you are.
yeah,
You hit
sometimes,
a, you hit a zone.
yeah, sometimes I'll get like that. Like if one time we did the mile and I'll get like that runner's cough after, like just like I feel like I pushed myself so hard. But yeah, anyways, I feel really happy that I've been consistent with my iron, and I'm hoping that it continues to pay off. And yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that was nice. And it was also just nice for me, like background on me is that way back 10 years ago, I struggled with eating disordered tendencies and stuff when I was doing college sports and just like dealing with my own shit, becoming an adult and stuff. And so I feel like for a long time, I felt like anything like this would kind of like trigger those thoughts or whatever. Like once it's so interesting because when you're in it, I just thought that I would like never feel kind of normal or whatever around food or exercise. And I don't want to say like I don't even know what other people's normal is. But I want to say that it's been 10 years and I feel so like I love where I'm at with how I feel about food and eating and working out and all that stuff. Like I've always been a really active person. I love to work out and that has not changed. I even had an instance because I eat a lot of food. I feel like this is maybe adjacent to sports. But like if you're an active person, you need to eat a lot of food to like fuel your energy and your activity.
Yeah. Keep your
And
energy level up.
yeah, and it's also like that's how your brain, that's how you have enough energy to think and have interesting,
Right.
compelling intellectual conversations and debates. Like I think food is so important for body function, brain, and also like the enjoyment and social element of it all, like going out to dinner or making dinner with the people that you love, or like I love what I make in the morning. It like brings me so much joy, especially with it being
Mhm.
warmer outside. Like getting to go outside and sit in the sun and like eat my breakfast is one of my favorite parts of the day. And I just think it's really cool to be at this place where yeah, I'm not obsessive over food and I am not like critical of my body in the way. I just thought that there were some ways that my brain was like always going to be like that. And this is like a kind of horrible, maybe even like fat phobic thought, but I either thought that I was always going to have this like horrible voice in my head, or that I would be able to get over that, but then I would like feel really ugly and have let myself go, whatever that even means. And I just think it's so cool to be like so far removed from the eating disorder to like that's just like not at all how my brain works. And I feel like so confident and like sexy and like physically pretty or whatever, but I also feel like really strong and capable, and those things matter so much more to me now, like, especially I think as I'm getting older, I'm 31, I think so much more about like my dad, we still go on like really long walks or hikes still today. And I want to be, in my 60s, 70s, 80s, able to hike and walk. And
Hmm.
especially for women, like osteoporosis and like bone density is such a problem.
Yeah,
Women.
that's a
So
problem.
you need to be able to have like grip strength
You
because,
you need stability and you need
yeah, balance.
flexibility.
Yep.
You get
All
those two, you're good.
I think like that's been my mindset over the last especially year, but like for a while now. But I've paid more attention to it is like the longevity aspect of balance is super important, wrist strength is super important, and bone density is super important because a lot of times when you get older, you'll fall and a lot of people they'll break their hip or something.
Yeah, and then they're brittle, right?
They can't catch themselves when they fall, or they'll break their wrist when they fall and they can't get up, and it makes recovering from that a lot harder. um like I said, I feel like I'm very lucky, especially I've made a lot of friends in adult, like a lot of my friends have known my parents since I was in high school, but I've met more people who have met my parents now, and they're kind of, they're like, oh, this is where you get it from. Like both of my parents are extremely active uh and active like in a workout sense, but also just like my dad is constantly doing yard work outside, like I said, hiking. My mom's always
Yeah,
walking.
just
So I think
activity
I
level
get it
so
from
that
them.
they're always engaged in life and their
Yes.
bodies are helping them rather than working against them, which is a great thing.
There was
I love Mr. Corey from the chat. This is hilarious. He says, so should we order food for lunch in Shanahan on draft day?
yeah.
Well,
um
to tell you the truth, Corey, what I've written about before is I wanted to set up Kyle with a bunch of sandwiches in a supply closet, and he can stay there throughout the entire draft.
I love that. And we'll get into the draft really quick, but I want to read Julie's. I love this. My dad and brother and I were both marathon runners. Wow, by the way, congratulations. What an accomplishment. My dad is still 86 and plays tennis weekly. He's my hero.
Well,
I'm a huge, first of all, if you Julie know this, and if you watch my show frequently, both Tom and I really look up to our dads and cherish our
yeah,
relationships with our dads.
yeah,
And yeah, I think also as I've gotten older, I've spent a lot more time with older people, just like I've been in those environments, and I've seen like crazy disparities from like some people. I remember when I was younger, and this is no offense to my grandma, I love her so much. She's this old Italian woman when she was like 50, she was like, I'm dead. Like I just remember thinking when I was a kid that was so old based on like how her lifestyle was. And I'm not shitting on her. She's, great heart, love her. But then I like lived in San Luis Obispo where like I had track coaches, I had teachers who were in their 70s, 80s who would run up and down Bishop Peak, like the mountain. They were
yeah.
so
That's no
active.
joke. That's
Yeah.
a legitimate hill. Yeah,
Here,
I've been there. Yeah,
yeah.
I had friends that were at Cuesta, and so I met with them and ran on that. And the
I love that you know
my
what you're
running, I
doing.
go back to marathons also. I ran the San Francisco Marathon in 1978.
Tom, you're so cool. God, everyone's running marathons and I feel pressure to I like part of me wants to run one because I see so many people do it and I love running. But I do think for some reason my body wears like I think I've done a couple half marathons. But I think after when I get into long training blocks, my shins start to hurt. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, you need to have good shoes,
yeah.
and you need a lot of training to lead into it. I mean,
Yeah.
I was running 15 to 20 miles a day for 4 months leading into the marathon to
God,
prepare myself. So yeah, good stuff.
yeah.
San Francisco Marathon then was brutal because they start us in Golden Gate Park, then we go out in the Great Highway,
Heels?
we go around Lake Merced and come back. And so we're
That's
coming
crazy.
back and it's on the Great Highway and the wind is in our face just as we hit the wall.
No.
And so I hit the wall at
Yeah,
19 where you're supposed to, and then you have to climb a hill to go back into the park to finish.
that's so horrible.
And it's
That I can't. The marathon in general is tough, but the marathon in SF pumps it up a notch or 12. But yeah, so anyways, all that to say is I've been feeling really grateful and good recently about more things than one, but one of them being, where I'm at with how I feel about my health and fitness, which is nice.
Which is great.
Papa J, your comment is hilarious. I hate it. But anyways, now I want to transition into some 49ers news, but we're going to start by talking about some NFL news and how we think it could potentially affect the 49ers. And that is that Jaxon Smith-Njigba got a huge contract extension, new contract today by the Seahawks. He is by far the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. Adam Schefter put it out today. I think it's $42 million. I had it popped up, and then just now.
Yeah, 4 years, $168.6 million.
Nice. Yeah, $120 million guaranteed. I mean, he tops the highest paid wide receiver by far. Kind of surprises me that they paid him this much. And I'm seeing some people, talk about, is that worth it or not? I talked with you, and you said the contract, those initial numbers might be more benefiting the agent than how it will actually work out. Is that possible?
Yeah, because we have to remember that he still has 2 years left in his rookie deal. And so this extension, when you factor that in, really, he's getting paid $32 million a year on average over the next 6 years. That's really what's going on, because you have to combine it with the rookie deal. And so what's essentially happening is they're using the extension to pay him top of the league money retroactively almost. That they're saying that we're going to take care of you because you had this great year in a rookie deal. We're going to give you a huge extension to compensate for that. So really his average is $32 million a year, even though the extension is $42 million. And so there are going to be agents in the league who are going to point to that and say, see, he got an average of $42 million. No, he's getting an average of 32. And I think that most teams will be able to see through agents trying to do that and saying, "Yeah, nice try, Sparky, but no." So he's getting paid a ton, but it's compensating for what he's already done and what he's going to do. It's not as much as the extension alone would indicate.
Now, the Seahawks were able to get this deal done with JSN before the Rams extended Puka Nacua. And I think there's talks that should also happen this offseason.
It's supposed to. They're in talks.
It could happen next season, right? Because he's in that.
It's one of those where he's still got time left. Yeah. But they want to make a deal happen. And so this is going to spike up the price. Puka's agent will say 4 years, $42 million, and the Rams will say, no, 6 years, 32. And so we'll see how that goes. But I would expect that Puka's going to get a deal that averages over 30 a year.
Yeah. So are the Seahawks is part of the reason they jumped on this and paid him so much? Are they trying to tarnish their, in-division rival by forcing the Rams now to pay Puka more? Or do you think that
I don't think there's anything intentional as far as now we're going to really screw you over on your Puka talks? I think it's just JSN's agent was aggressive and the Seahawks wanted to make sure he was happy. And so they did this. And it explains that why did they let Kenneth Walker go? Why did they let Kobe Turner go? Or Kobe Bryant go? And so, this is why, they're going to pay him a ton, but they're okay with that because he's their offense.
Do you think, I guess you're right that he's their offense. Julie says she thinks she likes Puka a little bit better. I think on the field, I might agree, but maybe it's just how they're used in their particular offenses. I'm not trying to down JSN, but I want to, because you're in Seattle. So I think maybe it's nice to have you on here because you have a better perspective on how Seahawks fans feel about JSN. I did not think he was the best wide receiver in the league, but maybe I'm not watching enough Seahawks or something.
It's how he's perceived by the team. That's what counts, is that they wanted to pay him top of market money as a thank you, and they wanted to compensate him for work already done. So part of this extension, again, is retroactive in making up for what he's already accomplished on a rookie deal. They wanted to make sure that he felt duly compensated throughout. And so that's the emphasis of this talk, is that they're saying that we wanted to make sure that JSN was comfortable with what he got, that he was happy to be a Seahawk, that he's going to commit to the team long term, and that he knows that we value him highly. And so all those things were accomplished, but at a price, because you pay somebody that much money, it's a lot. Yeah. Even at 32, it's still a lot of money. And they're going to have to deal with some issues in the cap, because there's also money that goes up for everybody, for Darnold, for a number of people that have to still be taken care of. So the Seahawks have to be careful in managing the overall roster, because pretty soon they'll run into what the Niners did, where it's just you've got guys that deserve to get a ton of money, and you pay them, and pretty soon you're out of money. And then you're too dependent on having rookie deals to compensate just to have enough players to offset the guys that get so much money.
Yeah. Kind of might not bite them right now, but feels like eventually they might be in a state of like desperation where they're trying to balance out their roster. And we kind of see that with the 49ers.
Right. Yeah. They're trying to set a foundation, is what they're trying to do, is just how do we make all these pieces fit? And kind of they're victims in a way of their own great drafting, that you draft so well and you draft really well early, then those players are going to be stars and you got to pay them.
Interesting. Do you feel like the Seahawks have taken a step back this free agency so far, because they've obviously lost a couple players, but they've,
I think they have taken a step back overall. That I think that losing Kenneth Walker and losing Bryant are pretty big blows. And that while they got Josh Jobe and brought him back, and that's what they had to do, he's the DB they valued most. They've got some holes to fill in the draft. So before you entered free agency, they had a complete team. Now they have to deal with the secondary. They have to deal with another running back, and they have to bring in a new right guard. So they've got three primary needs that they're going to have to address in the draft.
Do you feel like with their momentary, and they're good at drafting, so they might be able to might be able to like have success at those positions, even though they have that need right now. Going into this next season, do you think where they stand right now, the Rams and 49ers have taken steps to be able to compete with the Seahawks?
Yeah, I think what the Rams did at DB changes the equation, because Seattle had a ton of yards and points against the Rams defense because their DBs were weak. Now they've upgraded to basically the best combo of defensive backs in the perimeter in the league, or of guys that can play outside inside like McDuffie. So I think the Rams have passed them, and the Rams get the 13th pick. And so they can add whatever they want. They're going to get a high value pick in the draft. The Seahawks aren't. They're picking at the end of the first. So I think that the Rams, if they get that 13th pick right, will leap past the Seahawks as far as who's favored to win this coming season. I think they are.
Could the Rams want Sadiq?
They could. It's possible that he's one of the people that they're going to look at. I think that they're leaning Mekhi Lemon, but Sadiq is in the equation. There's a number of ways they could go. They need help in their offensive line, wide receiver, linebacker, in my opinion, safety. So they can basically take the approach of best available.
Okay.
And Les Snead, like John Schneider, is also a really good drafter. So they should be fine.
We'll get to it a little bit more later, but I've had an eye out on Sadiq, and two teams that draft ahead of the 49ers that I was thinking might also have their eye on it would be the Rams or the Ravens.
And Tampa.
Oh, Tampa, I didn't even think about that. But yeah, so it seems unfortunate. I don't know how high he'll go, but it seems like he's might not make it to where the 49ers are drafting.
Yeah, Daniel Jeremiah in his latest mock has Sadiq going 27 to the Niners.
The
But
second time he's mocked in there.
Right. But I'm not sure that that's going to happen because somebody that's that athletic usually goes higher.
Yeah. Do you remember for the people watching how he did at the combine?
I don't know. The Oregon just had their pro day, and I didn't see any results from that because I think that Sadiq did some, but I'm not sure if he did.
What's interesting is John.
I can look it up. Just give me a second. Look it up.
While you're looking it up, I thought I should tell people there's certain pro days that John Lynch usually goes to every single offseason, and he hasn't been at, like, he didn't go to Stanford this year. Obviously Oregon just had their pro day. I don't know if it's just he trusts their front office so much, maybe he feels like he doesn't need to be there because he can just ask the coaches, and he's drafted players from both of those programs before. Maybe that's it. Maybe he feels like it's better for him to go to organizations that he doesn't have his intel at without. But I found that interesting that he has a different strategy this offseason than he has before.
Well, he went to Georgia because those are the players they're looking at. There's a couple of players in Georgia. Dalen Everett, the DB, they met with him at Indy at the combine. Michael Moore, the guard, is another player they could look at. He might have been interested in Oscar Delp, but then Delp ran such a fast 40 that the Niners can't draft him. He's gone. So, yeah, at the combine, Sadiq ran a 4.39.40, bench press 26, vert 43.5, broad jump 133. So he killed it.
Good.
Yeah. And that's, best in the class and all of that.
So why does Daniel Jeremiah think he's going to fall, Tom?
Because Sadiq has other issues and teams have other needs. Sadiq has a drop problem and he has a productivity problem that while he has all these physical traits, it hasn't shown up in the stats. And part of that is because he drops 10% drop rate.
Well, that
pretty high.
Takes him out of the Niners then, because we know Kyle doesn't like that.
We know Kyle doesn't like that. So, yeah. But I think that his athleticism is such that he's probably going to get drafted well before 27.
Well, it'll be interesting to look, but I did find, I know we talked about him earlier on, and when certain people mock the same players over and over again, I never know. I'm like, okay, do you have inside information or do you just really like this fit? And it could just be that.
Yeah. It's Jeremiah has inside information on some teams, but I don't think he has them on all.
Yeah.
And he does color on radio for the Chargers, so he's going to be connected with what they do. I always pay attention to what Jeremiah has to say about the Chargers.
Yeah. Mr. Corey says Rams, Ravens, Tampa, and Philly all to watch for Sadiq.
Yeah. Philly brought Goddard back, so it's not as urgent a need for them. But I think that they would still look at it just because Howie Roseman's Howie Roseman. That's the kind of player he would like.
And then Dixon says Philly will go after Trent to fix their run game. Meanwhile, we're trying to add wide receivers with no O-line help. That kind of transfers us into our next segment. Tom just had an article drop right before we went live, so I urge you all to check that out after the show, not right now. But there was a report that came out this week that the 49ers and Trent are not close to getting a deal done, that Trent is basically not going to flinch. And now we know the 49ers are at least, if Trent was calling chicken, they didn't duck at first. There was a option for them to give him a $10 million signing bonus. If you guys remember back to when Brandon Ayuk had his offseason drama when he was getting his contract extension, same sort of thing happened where he had guaranteed money and fans were wondering, if they pay him that,
Yeah. What happened was the roster bonus folds into his contract for this year. So it increases his cap for the time being, but if he wants to negotiate an extension, the cap changes based on whatever that new money will be, because his money right now isn't guaranteed. So technically it's on the books for 40 plus, but that's not what'll be on the cap because they can either trade him or extend him, but they'll do one or the other. The article that I had today, I come to the conclusion that they're probably going to end up trading him this time because Parag Marate is back in power because Kyle blew it with Aiyuk. And so Jed is going to listen to what Parag wants more than what Kyle wants. Kyle wants to bring Trent back, obviously. Yeah. Parag wants to get rid of him. That's what he's done before. Trent Brown wanted too much money, trade him. DeForest Buckner wanted too much money, trade him, and then draft their replacement. So we'll see if Parag gets the lightning strikes for Parag 3 times. And if so, here we are again. But that's what I think could probably happen this time. And also that Trent has gone. Now, I don't blame him. He's gone for his money. But I think the Niners get tired of every second year. Here's Trent saying, pay me top of tackle market money, pay me a giant signing bonus, and make it all guaranteed. And after a while, the Niners are going to discuss, and you look at his performance this year, it was good late. It wasn't that good early. His first half of the season wasn't that good as he got playing into shape. Then after that, he played his best ball probably in the middle third of the season, middle quarter, and then he got hurt again. So do the Niners really want to go forward with Trent on his terms when he's going to be 38 next year? Probably not, especially when Parag is in control.
Yeah. To back up what you said about Parag being in control, Kyle Shanahan coached a flag football game this weekend in LA. We can get into that later, or we cannot because it was very unimportant. But he was asked about Trent. He gave up, it was 2 seconds, but he said, no updates from me. I actually stay pretty much out of all of that. I know John Lynch and everyone is working hard to do that. I believe that we will get a deal done. We love Trent too much, and eventually that will work it out.
In the past, it would.
He's like speaking his wants, right? But
yeah,
what is interesting for me is that like the bottom half is what everyone has said. They always say Trent loves us, we love Trent. About XYZ player. But that first part is what I found interesting because I think before, if pushes came to shove, Trent has been able to call up Kyle and been like, I'm going to walk if you don't, put your hand, fist down and make them give me what I want. I don't think Kyle has that power anymore. And he says that in the beginning, I stay out of that. He mentions John Lynch, Parag, the front office, and says, it's them working hard and basically I have no say. And I think that's more true this offseason than it ever has been after, the Brandon Aiyuk situation worked out the way it did. I'm not saying it's Kyle's fault, but he put his neck out and it didn't work out. And I think you're right. They were like, okay, we're taking a little bit of that control back.
Yeah. It's Kyle lost power with the Aiyuk situation, no question. And if you then empower Parag instead, it puts money as the primary concern as opposed to the play. And Kyle is the reverse. So what's going to happen? I think that Trent is going to trend. He's going to say, I want what I always have. I want to be the highest paid tackle in the league. I want 2 years guaranteed. And I want as much money up front as you're willing to give me in a signing bonus. And I think for the first time in his sequence of asking for these, Kyle doesn't have the power to pull that off.
Yeah.
And I don't think Trent's going to adjust to that. He's going to just say, this is what I want. And if you won't pay it to me, somebody else will. And that's going to be the other thing he's going to fall back on, is that he thinks that if he's traded, another team will pay him on his terms. They'll pay him the money he wants. Washington is really interested in Trent, but they don't have the cap room to pull off a trade. So if they did acquire Trent, they would have to make some other moves to create the cap room to take Trent in. They could. They've wanted Trent back for a long time. New England has the cap room to make a trade. They're the ones that would be the most likely trade partner, and they need a trade because they need to take their draft pick from last year and move him inside. He can't play tackle. So they're going to have to figure something out. New England is the most likely trade partner. Then you've also got other teams that could use Trent. So that can be somebody like Washington, Kansas City, Detroit, Houston. All of those teams could be interested. But I think what will happen is that New England is the path of least resistance. And so if they want Trent, and if they're willing to pay Trent on his terms, then that's what gets done. The problem is that if Trent says, I want X, and no one's willing to give it to him, then it just extends out and it becomes a real mess. And that's a possibility too.
Hold out and kind of take it out on the Niners because he'll feel like the Niners are the only option he has to get it.
Right. And so at that point, he would hold out into the season and say, pay me. But then the Niners would say, nope. And what would happen is he would play out this year on his existing deal, which would become guaranteed. That's the way it would happen. But I still think that if they can make a deal, and if a team is out there that's willing to pay Trent the money that he wants, all guaranteed with a big upfront signing bonus, they'll trade him. And then it's okay. What do the Niners do? A lot of people are hoping, Brian says in the chat, Trent to the Chiefs for their top pick will never happen.
You get a top pick
because Trent is asking for an extension at big money at 38. The best you're going to get from Trent is a third-round pick back, because they have to pay him, they have to extend him, they have to take the risk that the Niners aren't willing to make. So the Niners would have to take a third-round pick as the best that they could get back for Trent. The only way that they could get a higher pick was if they paid money to the other team, where they covered part of the contract so that team didn't have to pay as much money to Trent. But if the Niners got rid of Trent, it's because of the money. So they're not going to say, well, gee, if we pay him more, then we can get a second. Probably not. I think that a third-round pick is the best you could do in trade for Trent. And that's what the Niners would kind of be expecting anyway, because that plugs their third-round hole that they sent the third-round pick to Dallas for Osa Odighizuwa, which is a great trade. But now if they could trade Trent and get a third back, that's probably the best they could do.
Yeah, I'm reading different suggestions in the comments. Could there be a
plus our 27? Probably not, again, because the team has to have the cap room to make a move like that. New England's the only one, and New England isn't going to trade the Niners aren't going to trade 27 for 31.
Yeah, backwards.
So, unless they were trading back and got more picks back from New England, but to move up in the draft is unlikely. You can do that using Mac Jones because his contract is really very affordable, but you can't use Trent to do it. He costs too much.
Yeah. Someone says Kruger was talking about sending Trent to Chicago for picks and unproven young linemen.
Yeah, but Chicago's not going to do that anyway, because they've lost some people. They had the unexpected retirement of Drew Dahlman.
Yeah.
And they're going to, Larry always has sweetheart deals for the Niners in his scenarios. I don't think you need to pay that much attention to him. He knows what he's doing. He knows the league. He knows the personnel really well. He knows the draft really well, but his scenarios are not grounded in reality.
I like the idea that Chicago, because they've been so aggressive at getting Caleb Williams, a strong offensive line and really investing in their trenches, I could see why his mind would go there. But I just think right now, and what we've seen from Chicago, is that they yes, they'll make investments in free agency when they feel like it's a guy that's really going to put them over the edge. But right now they have a lot of money tied up in the guys that they have already gone out and gotten. And I feel like they might look to draft players to come up to grow under the offensive linemen that they already have. And what they're really looking to replace more would be an eventual center. Although I think they did go get a center.
Yeah, they did. They got a center. They got May.
Yeah.
The 10XU says that Kansas City's already got Isaiah Simmons, but Kansas City is the one that's most interested in Trent. And they lost Juwan Taylor in free agency, so they would move Simmons to right tackle and they would move Trent to left and acquire him and plug him in at left tackle. So yeah, Simmons has been great, but they would move him. Yeah, it's Trent Williams. You don't tell Trent Williams move to right tackle because we like Isaiah Simmons now. That wouldn't happen. Trent wouldn't go to a team that says we want you to play right tackle. And Kansas City is smart enough to know if we acquire Trent, it's to play left. Simmons would move to right.
People are dunking on Larry. I want to be nice to creators or other content creators in the comments, but I think it's fair to say that he tends to give scenarios that the Niners would be fast to jump on, and other teams would go, why would we do this?
It's the only nitpick that I have on Larry is the scenarios aren't real.
No.
But his knowledge is superb, so I don't want to cast any shade his way.
Yeah. He's a very dedicated streamer. Sometimes my partner and I will be like laying down on the couch before bed, and I'll play a little joke. I'll go, who do you think is streaming right now? And it's always Larry, 9 a.m, 10 p.m. So good job on him.
He grinds a lot.
He can talk.
And credit to him for doing that.
Yeah. And I think Brian brings up a good point. Just because his scenarios aren't realistic doesn't mean maybe they don't give you an idea. And that's kind of with the Chicago thing. The trade scenario he suggested, I think, is pretty ridiculous when it comes to Chicago's part. But like the idea that, hey, we should consider what teams have been aggressive in free agency, which ones think maybe they're on the preposition. Nope. Which ones think that they are in contention for a Super Bowl, and kind of narrow it down. Okay. And that's why I like what Tom was saying with the Texans, the Patriots, which teams feel like they could make a run. Okay. Those are all teams that should probably be interested in Trent then, right? Because if you don't,
and that's the only way you would be.
Soon, you're not going to go get the 38-year-old player. But if you think, hey, I'm there and just a couple good moves could really take me over the edge, then those teams are going to be interested. So then you look at that group of teams that you narrow down and you go, okay, cap space wise or pick, draft picks wise, which teams are, have what it could take and which teams would the Niners accept. And that's how you can kind of narrow down, I feel like, more what the realistic contenders for the Trent Williams sweepstakes would be.
Right, because only a contender would be interested in paying Trent that much money when he's 38. Yeah, they're viewing it as Trent would be the final piece for them to be a Super Bowl contender.
Yeah,
and so Houston makes a lot of sense. Kansas City makes a lot of sense. New England makes a lot of sense. I can see all those teams being interested in Trent, but they have to be willing to spend what Trent wants, and that's not a given. Precipice. On the precipice.
When I was in first grade, my friend and I got kicked out of class because we were always talking in class, and I got stuck on some word that normally I could pronounce, but for some reason I couldn't. And then she kept saying it and I kept saying it wrong, and we were just in tears. And this poor teacher was like, You 12-year-olds are having a meltdown in my classroom. Get out. And I was just sobbing. I thought it was so funny.
That's great. That's
I
great.
don't think the Panthers are.
The Panthers could use him, and yes, Julie, Trent is from Texas.
I think the Texans could be interesting because we've seen them making a lot of all-in type moves for their team this year,
and
what
they need OL help.
The side of the ball that they really need to enhance in order to make that run is their offense. Defensively, right. I think they were the best team, even better than the Seahawks, but their offense just could not keep up. So yeah, I think getting a stable line, especially if they want to evaluate. I mean, you've kind of already evaluated him, but see where you're going from here with CJ Stroud. This might be a scenario where it's like, hey, this is your last year, or we're going to look to bring other quarterbacks in here, to not lose out on the fact that we have this generational defense. I think it might be smart. And a guy like D'Amico, who's already been with the 49ers and knows the value of Trent, I would not put that behind. I
think that's realistic, that Houston would have very good reason to be interested in Trent. It's just, can they make it happen cap-wise? Are they willing to spend what he would want? We'll see. But I think that it's leaning in that direction for the Niners right now is the important thing, is that with Parag having control over Kyle, money controls field. And therefore, Trent asked for more money again.
Yeah.
I want my extension as soon as I can possibly get it. And I want the most money that I can get up front in the signing bonus as I can get. And I want the most money that I can get as top paid tackle. It's leaving no penny on the table. There's no reason or no quarter given on Trent's part. He wants absolutely everything he can get.
Yeah.
And again, I'm all for that. I'm for players getting their money. But I think that the Niners are going to be tired of Trent basically just, this is a stick up. You can't keep holding us up like this, Trent. So, and Mr. Corey may be right that Kyle is no longer in a position to take care of everybody. One of my conspiracy theories is Kyle didn't draft a tackle because he wants to force them to stay with Trent.
Oh, that's interesting. Playing 2D chess right there.
Yeah. I think that was a possibility, but then Kyle didn't foresee that he would lose the power to keep him.
That's extreme.
And that changes the whole dynamic. So what can the Niners do? Free agency, Taylor Decker wanted out from the Lions, and he's a 10-year veteran LT. And PFF had him ranked 41st overall among all tackles. He's a nice player. So that's somebody they could sign. Problem is he's going to be 32 next season. So, that's what happens when you're a 10-year vet. But he can play. And so if they are worried about, and he'd be a lot cheaper than Trent. So that even though Decker is holding out because he doesn't have his price met yet by the market, the Niners could still look at Decker as a much cheaper option than keeping Trent. And you don't fall off a cliff. You fall some, but you don't fall a ton. If you draft somebody to take over for Trent, the gap in play is going to be immense.
Yeah.
If you sign Taylor Decker, it's not nearly as steep a fall. But are the Niners creative enough to understand that and do it? No. Would I expect them to even be looking at Taylor Decker? Probably not. I would, because they're going to be looking at the draft and saying they're commonly used to, we have our target in mind. We know who we want. They fall in love quickly and say, I want this guy. I want that guy. And if they come into this draft saying, I want this edge, I want that wide receiver, if they then have to pick a tackle in the first, that upsets everything.
Yeah.
And they may say, and that's where it would make a lot more sense to say, okay, then go sign Taylor Decker.
Yeah.
It's a smart move for them. If they are wedded to the draft picks that they want, that's the best path for them to stay on task, where they can keep the guys they want. They can run the draft the way they want now. They don't have to adjust for a tackle.
It takes away that excuse, that preemptive excuse where then they could be like, well, our draft picks didn't work out because really we wanted these guys, but you put us in a position where we had to do this, and then we couldn't get these guys. I like that signing someone in free agency not only gets you someone who's more ready to play in the NFL now because he's already done it for 10 years, but B, it takes away, hey, if this draft doesn't work out, you don't get to blame the scenario you're put in. No, this is all you. So
yeah,
I like taking away.
I like the accountability of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Accountability is
great. So in-house, the option would be, and Grant talked about this, that the Niners could flip Colton McKivitz from right to left.
You're going to stress
and
me.
He's extended his play. He's elevated his play. So McKivitz is somebody that they could look at it and say, Colton can handle going to left. If they did that, then I think they would have to pair him with Dominic Pooney, and they'd have to move both of them as a pair, because part of the reason McKivitz is elevated is having Pooney beside him, is that tandem is effective. So if you move McKivitz right to left, in my opinion, you also have to move Pooney. And he's accustomed to doing that. He played left guard at Kansas. So it's not like he's in some situation that he doesn't know how to play the position. Pooney did.
Okay.
So if you move Pooney from right to left, he could handle that. If you move McKivitz from right to left, it's a big drop from Trent, but it's not nearly as big a drop as if you draft somebody. In addition, if you made that switch left to right, then you can draft a right tackle as a rookie who would do less damage there, because left tackle is more important.
So if they made that switch, God, this is the worst scenario I could think of. I know that other people don't feel this way, but Tom, I hate even hypothesizing about this, but it's okay. I'm just so Pooney and McKivitz are on the left side. The starter for the right side would be a drafted player or someone on the team?
Yeah, the starters at guard and tackle on the right side would be draft picks.
Okay.
The Niners are bringing in a veteran free agent guard today.
Yeah.
Robert Jones.
Was with the Dolphins, right?
He's 27, 6'4", 334. Started every game for Miami in 24, but he wasn't that good. He was 94th out of 135 guards by PFF.
Oh, lovely.
So gave up 5 sacks, 28 pressures, but he's a good athlete, good build, young. I can see why they could be interested in him, but not as a starter. He's got to be a depth piece.
Yeah, he played 30 games from 21 to 24 with the Dolphins, including, like you said, all 17 in 2024, but then didn't play at all in 2025 with the Cowboys due to an injury.
Right.
Why would they? That's horrible. That's backwards for the 49ers. You don't let go of Trent. And the thing that pisses me off with the moving on from Trent scenario, which I've heard other people suggest is the right thing to do because you can't give in to him. To me, that logic of thinking is fine if they would have had that last year. If they would have said, okay, obviously this scenario with Trent is going to come up because he's going to be at an impasse with his contract where we don't want to pay him what we said we were going to pay him, and he's going to want an extension. So preemptively, we know that we're not going to want to do that. So last year, we draft someone to behind Trent, learn from Trent, and then he's been in the NFL in the weight room with the nutritionist for a year. Now we can slot that guy in. Also, last year was a better tackle and offensive line class in general. So to me, that would be fine. But applying that logic this year is like a move of desperation. You can't move off of Trent and still say that you're competing for a Super Bowl with Colton McKivitz as the best offensive line or the most experienced offensive lineman on your offensive line. That blows my mind. The scenario where maybe there's 2 draft picks on the right side and Pooney, who has, no offense, slid, fallen off a little bit since his freshman year.
He got hurt.
But he's not the best. He got hurt, true. Maybe he'll be better. But I like Pooney when he's the second or third best offensive lineman on the offensive line, not arguably the first. I like Colton McKivitz when he's like maybe the third. Like
Sure.
I
In a
don't want
perfect world, what's best for the team
that are
is to
like
keep
mediocre.
McKivitz and Pooney.
Like McKivitz is like, people are like, he's gotten better. He's not great. He's not good. Like, he's like serviceable. You don't want this serviceable guy to be your number one, the most important guy. And you're not going to let go of the Hall of Famer. Like, even if Trent's taking a step back, in my opinion, maybe I'm off on this, but in my opinion, is still miles better than McKivitz. And
sure he is.
Saying, okay, who's going to trade for Trent? It has to be a team that's in a win now mode. Well, why is that other team in a win now mode and you're getting rid of him? Does that mean you're admitting that you're not in a win now mode? Well, that's unacceptable to me. How many years are you allowed to not be in win now mode? You should have been last year you had all the excuses in the world. Well, the NFL was a clusterfuck, and maybe if you would have tried a little harder at the deadline or for the draft last year, you could have actually competed. I mean, they were basically competing with their roster, half their roster missing.
Yep.
I don't know.
You're approaching this as a fan would if you don't care about the money. You care about the play on the field. And the problem is that Kyle used to be the shepherd of that. He no longer has that power. Now Parag has the power, and therefore money is number one. And any fan is going to hate that. You're going to say, why, because of money, are we going to flip our offensive line? We're going to take McKivitz out of where he's playing well at right tackle and make him overmatched at left tackle. We're going to move Pooney from the right to the left, and we're going to draft 2 rookies. It sounds like just a train wreck. And yet, is that the likely scenario at this point? Maybe so. Because if you get rid of Trent, what do? You can't start a rookie at left tackle that's only played right tackle. The best rookie that's going to be there at 27 is Max Ianachor of Arizona State. Great athlete, fast, big, long, everything you would want, but he's a project because he's only played football since JC. He's only played in a junior college since. He didn't play high school ball. So he's got a lot of learning to do. He's a project, plays too high. But he's a great athlete. If you coach him up, he could be the best tackle from this draft in like 3 to 4 years. But it's going to take that long for him to get to that point. So how will you make this all managed? I don't know. This is kind of forced upon them by not drafting a tackle. The last time they drafted a tackle was 2021 with Jalen Moore in the 5th round. Why didn't you draft a tackle last year?
Yeah, consistently not priority.
There's the only answer that I can come up with is because Kyle wants to force their hand to keep Trent.
Yeah.
That's the only answer that I can come up with. And even then it feels pretty flimsy. It's it's my tinfoil hat routine on that one. So we'll see. But if they say we're not going to do this any longer with Trent, we're not going to enter this dance anymore, we're just not going to pay his ransom, then what's going to happen? There's a couple things they can do. It's Taylor Decker in free agency is what I would do. Or they flip McKivitz and Pooney and they draft a right guard and a right tackle.
Yeah. I hope that that's not the scenario. And it's not that I've been campaigning for the Niners to draft offensive linemen for 2 seasons now. I just think when I'm suggesting it, it was always with the assumption that these players would have a year under veterans that they could learn from.
Yeah.
I feel like we've seen, maybe it's not a 1-to-1 comparison, but like getting rid of Buckner and then immediately drafting Kinlaw and then being like, see, replicate that. Like, fans don't like it because fans are attached to these, incredible players that you're getting rid of. And they're going, okay, well, what does this mean for how do you feel about this season? So they're already side-eyeing this rookie. And then this rookie has these giant shoes to fill, and it's completely unfair to them. And then obviously it doesn't work out, at least in year 1. But I just feel like it's a recipe for like the player to get way unnecessary hate, for fans to, and it's a way of the organization kind of skirting it, right? Because what I keep going down to is this is bad planning from the Niners 2 seasons ago, or at least last offseason. You and I have been saying, hey, this scenario is going to come up where you're forced to draft. You should get ahead of it before it's a need, because if you do it when it's a need, that's going to put you and whoever that player is in a situation where you better be, like this guy is saying, the bust rate is high, and they didn't give themselves any opportunities to weed through guys and go, okay, we found one. They're going, you better make it right now. And if not, instead of blaming us, the fans are going to look at you because you're the guy that was supposed to fill in those shoes. You couldn't do it. So you at 23 years old, it's your problem now. And I don't like that strategy at all.
No, well, it's irresponsible. It's kicking the can down the road because Kyle wants his toys. He wants his wide receivers and running backs. And you look at all these and then you say, okay, you collect these guys, then you don't play them. Yeah. What if that was used on a tackle instead? Would we be in a better place right now? Yeah, we would. So, my hobby horse, Kyle, has to be stripped of final personnel control, period. And that's why you end up in situations like this, because Kyle doesn't want to draft an offensive tackle until he's forced to. Problem is, now he's forced to. Is that if they don't want to pay Trent what he wants because Parag leads the parade and they trade him, okay, now you're probably going to have to trade or at least draft a new starting tackle in some form. And in my article, I say that that's probably going to be a Hanachor because he's the best talent long term. He's got a lower floor because he's a project, but he's got a much higher ceiling because he has the physical traits to succeed. He just needs time, really. But that's time you could have spent on somebody else over the last 2 to 3 years if you drafted somebody, but they don't. No. Kyle is the anti-Howie Roseman. Howie Roseman will draft tackles 2 years in advance and have them ready to step in when a player retires. Not the case with the Niners. Now, Trent is threatening them, and we'll see what happens. But if I had to guess right now, they draft a Hanachor at 27 because they won't have a choice. The other problem is Dane Brugler of The Athletic has said, after you get out of the first round in the first 7 tackles, there's a massive drop-off in talent. So if you want to tackle, it's got to be in the first. And that's the other problem. You can't say, well, we'll take them in the second instead. No. Once you get past the first 7 tackles in this draft, it's a black hole.
Yeah. We skipped on drafting any offensive linemen in 2 back-to-back drafts that were said to have great offensive linemen. And now this draft, everyone's saying not great for the offensive line, but they back themselves into a hole where this might be where they have to do it. So
this is a draft, though, quickly. This is a good draft for guards. It's just a bad draft for tackles. There's no depth at tackle. There's a lot of depth at guard and center.
So maybe later on in the rounds, we could get that, if they do switch over Pooney, you could get that right guard somewhere.
Yeah, they can get the right guard in the 4th. There's good players available there. It's just that at tackle, if they want a starter, has to be in the first round.
We have some comments about being worried about the running back position, asking if they're going to draft a running back with 27. They're definitely not going to do that. And should not
at 27, no.
They have Jordan James. It'll be interesting to see. We saw him at the very, 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 very end of the season. He looked promising. They like Oregon's program, and that's where they got him from. So I was surprised that they didn't use him more, but also not surprised because they're so Christian McCaffrey centric. What really happens at that position will come down to, with all the touch, like Christian McCaffrey got a historic amount of touches last year. What does that do to his body going into this year? How much can he been given? He himself has even talked about maybe going into more of a wide receiver role and playing into more of that part of his position than just the every down running back. Now, is that he's also been said to, they ask him to get off the field and he refuses. He might start to be feeling his body a little different since he's outwardly suggested that could be what he transfers into. Maybe he knows that eventually he'll have to take that role. Will it be this year? I'm not sure. I imagine that they will take a running back at some point in the draft. But if I had to guess with how many needs that and holes they have, I don't think it'll be super high unless there's, a great one on the board right where they are in like the third round. I would be pretty unhappy if they did a running back, anything third round or higher. Is that wrong of me?
No, the draft is weak at running back. It might be the weakest position in the draft. There are some people that think there are some backs that are good, but there are backs that are fast, but they have vision problems. Each one of these backs has a fatal flaw is the problem. So I think that what they're going to do is just say Jordan James is our number 2, and we'll just roll with it. I would not expect them to draft a running back, but there is one back that they met with at his pro day. That's Jamari Taylor from Virginia. They met with him prior to his pro day in Charlottesville, and he's the kind of back that Bobby Turner would like. He's a one-cut back, see the opening, go through it. And he's also a decent receiver. He's got some good skills. So it's possible that Jamari Taylor is somebody they look at. He would be in the 4th round. But my expectation, though, is that they're not going to take it back. They're covering their bases in talking to Taylor that if we decide we want a running back, that's what we'll do.
Okay.
But I don't think that that's in the cards right now. Brian asked about Roche in the 4th. Tight end, I think that they're okay with their tight ends, knowing that even with Kittle coming back late, that they still have plenty of belief in who they have now. And so do they really need a tight end when they've still got a receiving tight end under contract that's going to play week 1 and start? Probably not. But there's a lot of fans who are saying we need a tight end. If that tight end is Kenyon Sadiq, I'm interested. If it's somebody else, less so. I think that these tight ends are okay. There's a ton of them. So I think that what they could end up doing is tight end as a UDFA and somebody that would have a legitimate shot at making the team.
Yeah. I think that it would be fine too. To me, it's just like when you have such glaring holes, not that you need to draft for need out of desperation, but you want to narrow down the position groups that you feel like you have to get. And obviously if a great one is right there where you're drafting, and maybe it's not your, top 3 needs, but it's the best player on the board, maybe you go for it then. But I think they've insulated themselves enough at running back and tight end, especially if Kittle is able to, come back and be half of what he was.
Well, we'll see. George usually recovers pretty well. It's just that he's getting injured more often. Yeah. And that's a concern. And they've tried to get a second tight end for a while and haven't been able to do it. So we'll see. Tight end is a possibility. Running back is a possibility. But when I look at the draft, I say they've got 6 picks. What are their needs in order as they perceive them? Edge, wide receiver, center, tackle, depending on what happens with Trent, guard, depending on what happens with Trent, safety, and defensive back. Yeah. And so that means that they have to pick 2, not all 3 offensive line spots in order to get DB and safety taken care of. And thanks, Joey. I would think that that's probably the way they go, is that if tackle is forced upon them, then okay, but then the next 2 picks are wide receiver and edge in whatever order. Then there's at least 1 other offensive lineman drafted, and then DB and safety. And they need to address safety, and this draft provides that. So go get one.
Yeah. We didn't touch on this, so I guess it'll be the last. Edge is a need after taking Michael Williams at 11. Shake my head. I'm not totally out on Michael Williams. I just think whatever his potential is going, if he's going to really hit it, we're not going to see that at any point. I think this year is going to be just him getting back to where he was and getting a strong baseline, overcoming that injury. Then he's going to need the next offseason where he's not worried on rehabbing. And that offseason is where he's going to be focused on growing his skill set. And I could be wrong, but I feel like
he has to recover before he can ascend. So he has to get physically back to 100%. So I agree with you, Ashely. I think that it's going to take him a while to get back to where he was, and then he can build from there. But yeah, I get Corey's frustration. Edge is a need a year after taking Michael Williams at 11. Here's the thing that we didn't really see until now is that Robert Saleh was hyper-focused on run defense only.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to take a run defender. And so Michael Williams stops the run. Can he really rush the passer? No, but he can win on athleticism. We'll see. And then you want to say, okay, well, what else are we going to do? And his other defensive tackles are running defense only, who can't. Alfred Collins can't rush the passer. Wes can rush the passer to an extent, but he's not that great at it. So what we're seeing now is the impact of Saleh being so focused on run defense that the pass rush was zip. And now Raheem is going to be the inverse. He's going to be, I need pass rushers, and they're not going to be run defenders. And we're going to see that in compensation. So Raheem is going to be looking at guys where his number one criteria is go get the quarterback. And that's why, as of now anyway, pass rush are the biggest need. Yeah. And I think that then Lynch has said as much. So he agrees with that. Yeah. And I think that what Raheem will say is, okay, I'm fine with taking a defensive lineman at 27, provided that his top skill right now is rushing the passer. And that means you are not taking Keldrick Falk. You are not taking Zion Young. You are taking Malachi Lawrence. You're taking a guy that can get after the quarterback that's got speed and athleticism. Yeah. You're doing something like that. So we'll see how it goes. But I think that the defense is going to have to be built out in what Raheem wants to see, which means you're migrating to a 3-4. You're going to need lighter guys that can rush the passer with speed. And this team needs speed. So that's part of what's going to have to go now. If they take an edge at 27, it'll be somebody that's quick, that can get after the quarterback.
Yeah. We'll end on this one. How do you feel about Joey Bosa? There was a report that came out that he's not going to take a deal to be with the 49ers, which I think we already anticipated last year. He kind of had an opportunity to take
Joey,
less the 49ers and he didn't. Aside from last year, he's off and on struggled with injuries. His dad retired from the NFL due to injuries. I think both the Bosa brothers are kind of programmed to be a little bit of solo agents, take care of themselves outside of the team, and get as much money as possible. They seem to see football as a job versus
as a contractor. They see it the way Trent does, where it's I want to get every penny. And Joey isn't going to give him a discount. He didn't last year. Not a surprise. So E-Nice asks, what direction are we going? I think that if they trade Trent, if they say we can't pay him, then I think it's a Hanachor at 27. At 58, they're probably going to take an edge. That'd be somebody like Derek Moore from Michigan. And then if they get a third-round pick back for Trent, then that would be the wide receiver pick. And then in the fourth round, they take a center, a guard, a DB, and a safety.
Yeah. Tom is full of knowledge, guys. You guys understand why I enjoy having him on so much. Tom, this was so fun. I feel like we were worried we weren't gonna have enough topics, and we ended up going over an hour. And we could even go on about Bosa next week when we go live. It'll be on Monday. And I think Kyle and John will have both spoken at the NFL owners meetings by then. I'll be going to those, and then there's an owners meeting, like cocktail party where I can try to get some insider info as well.
That'll be cool. I'm looking forward to that. I want to see what we could find out in Scottsdale. Center Mr. Corey says no center drafted in 9 years. I think that in this case, it's more of the player appeals to Kyle so much he might draft him. That Logan Jones from Iowa ran 4.59 in the 20 shuttle. That's the Kyle drill. And if you run it that quickly, I think Kyle might be interested in taking one. So Logan Jones, Parker Brailsford, both centers, both ran really well at Indy. I think Kyle could be interested as a result. But it's possible that they just skip on center and say, Toth can handle center. We don't need that. We just need a guard. And if that's true, that opens up another spot. Some people said we want to have a linebacker. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Dre,
especially bringing back Green, and they still do have winners, and I think that they're not set up necessarily for the future, but for this year, it's not
right. And that's what they're doing because neither of them have an extension. Scubba Pat says, I told Coach yesterday about Derek Moore. He doesn't like him. Yeah. What Coach wants is the solid defensive lineman. He wants a run defender first who can also rush the passer, because he thinks that Derek Moore is a guy that can't stop the run. He gets washed out. He does. But Raheem doesn't care about that. Raheem wants a pass rusher. Derek Moore is the best pass rusher they could get in the second round. So I think that's what they would look at. Got
it. Well, Tom, I had a really good stream with you. Thank you so much.
This was fun, Ashley. Thank you.
Thank you guys, everyone in the comments. You had great suggestions. Like I said, please go check out Tom's article. It was dropped like an hour before we went live. So he goes over if and I know you mentioned them, but the free agency options for moving on with Trent, draft options for moving on with Trent, and in-house, which is my least favorite, as you could see by the face I was making while he was speaking about it. But the in-house adjustments that could be made if they do move off of Trent, which Tom is pointing out seems to be what would happen if they're going with Parag. I'm still being a fan and hoping that they go for what is best for winning a Super Bowl. But if we look at the Niners' recent strategies, it seems like going, after cap savings for Jed York, the billionaires, what they like to do. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. Make sure to give me a like and a comment. Those things really help my channel. And then tune in next week. It'll be really exciting. I'll be coming in from Arizona, and you guys and Tom can help pick my brain and give me ideas for things to hopefully bring up. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Tom. Love you.
Thanks, Ashley. Love you too.
Bye, guys.